Hey, I'm Rachel,
And I'm Amanda, and this is Beyond a Ballot.
powered by DoorDash.
Welcome back. We're so thrilled to be back here. I'm Rachel here with Amanda. Hi.
Hi.
It has been a while. It's been I think 2 weeks since our emergency episode. We intended not to be back, but obviously had to come back when everything was unfolding in Ottawa. But here we are, post-Trump inauguration, post launch of the Liberal leadership race, and we are here today to break everything down and catch you all up. First of all, how are you doing?
Well, it's inauguration week, so it's been so busy.
It's been
so
busy.
Crazy. So many things to talk about.
I know.
And we're, and I think people are excited that we're back because we have a great episode today. You and I are going to chat, but we are also, so you have to stay through our talk to get to the good stuff. We're like the appetizer, and then we have the main course.
Yes.
We have, and we'll reintroduce before she's on, but we have Jessica Yellin, who's a former Whitehouse correspondent for ABC News and CNN.
Mm-hmm.
And she's the founder of News Not Noise, which is a community for nonpartisan, trustworthy news and information. She has a lot of Canadian followers, actually, and
I remember her on TV. Do you remember her?
She's incredible.
She's
going to break down the first week of Trump, the first few days of Trump. She's going to talk to us about the inauguration. She's going to share with us some really interesting tidbits about kind of the traditions and the culture and the pomp and circumstance around it. And she's also going to tell us a little bit about how Americans are feeling and what we should be expecting in this impending, maybe to be trade war. So I think that there's a lot of good stuff coming.
I am mildly obsessed with the pomp and circumstance and tradition around U.S. inaugurations. Did you know that?
I'm mildly obsessed with pomp and circumstance.
Oh, let's just give you a shout out there. The tradition.
Never have I used pomp and circumstance so much outside of the context of my PR agency.
Well, it has been a lot of pomp and circumstance this week.
It has been. Should we start with Melania's hat?
Oh God. Okay, my neighbor and I were having this,
but I can't. We can't not. Let's talk. We're going to start with something light because we're going to talk about a lot of stuff that's not
let's
light.
dive into the fashion, which
you
Vogue
loved
covered.
the hat.
I loved the hat.
I hated the hat.
Look. I thought it was very 2025. There was all these women in bright colors, and I used to love that look, and I often wear that look. But Melania was just leaps and bounds ahead with that very 2025 hat. My neighbor was saying it's like it was a protectant from having to get too close to her husband. But it was beautiful. I also thought Ivanka. Yeah, mom was Ivana. Her green outfit was also beautiful. Although, yes, I have seen the comparisons to Handmaid's Tale and the uniforms that they wore. Yeah.
Which is so wild.
Yeah, I saw that online.
And you saw all the Hamburglar
memes? Of course. I loved
Melania's hat. Anyway,
it was kind
of
true.
we usually don't get into the
superficial
about fashion like this, but how could you resist this
exactly.
week? You got to give us this one. This is, come on, we're all talking about it anyway.
Yeah. Let us know if you agree with me about the hat.
It was this was a big deal this week. Now President Trump, President-elect last week, President Trump this week, officially taking and kicking off his second term in office. His inauguration events were held indoors, which is not the norm. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. What things stood out for you as you watched Inauguration Day or maybe the inauguration speech?
This is what I go through every time there's an inauguration and a change of government, is what is going through the heads of the outgoing administration. So in the last, as we will remember, the last change of government, Trump wasn't there. He left before he could welcome the Bidens. He didn't leave a note in the desk, which is tradition. He didn't have tea with him. He didn't stay overnight. Like there was, they were gone. what in this case, the Bidens were very eloquent. They played through all the traditions. They spent a lot of time with the Trumps. But what are you thinking in that moment as the outgoing president? Are you thinking about things that you would have done differently, especially because Biden could have had another 4 years? The Democrats could have had another 4 years. And like when they get on that plane and the Bidens went to California, it was reported, are they the sadness I think that I would feel in that situation, that for me was kind of the theme throughout the day, is just this feeling of loss on the Democratic side, and how they can keep their heads up high throughout that 24-hour period where you're basically handing over your job to someone else.
Yeah, having to put on this front,
Right.
And having to, after a really kind of ugly campaign, must have been so challenging. And we're going to talk a lot more about Inauguration Day with Jessica Yellin. We're also going to talk to her about some of the first things that Trump did. And wow, it was like a flurry of activity.
Could you imagine
out of day one
in Canada if we started administrations like that? Like, not, put aside what the issues were, but if we had a new prime minister in day one, he was like, okay, here's what's changing. Like all of these things, it's crazy. It would never happen that fast in Canada.
No.
And so it was just like, if you were blinked, you missed something on Inauguration Day. Very unbelievable. What was your favorite part?
I don't know that I had a favorite part.
What was the thing that stuck out to you the most?
I mean, the thing that really stuck out to me the most, I think, was what a lot of people's takeaway, and that was just the speed at which they are moving, and the new discipline that they have. And I was reading somewhere today about this idea of, this is now the time when Trump turns into Trumpism, like something that really sticks. In his first round in office, we often really talked about, the populist surge and the way that he spoke. It was like this kind of like shock and awe. And now it's turned into something that feels more resilient, something that feels like it could stick around. I think the first time around, it felt sort of like, well, this won't last.
Right.
And this time it's like, well, it's back. Not only is it back, but it feels like it's like entrenched. It's taking new roots. And I think that'll be interesting to watch over the next at least 2 years.
He did have, a first go at it and then 4 years to reflect on what went wrong. Yeah. And so, learning government and systems, and to all my friends that have gone into, for example, the House of Commons that never worked in the House of Commons. And it's like, you're really trying to piece together how these incredible systems work, how you can table a bill, how you find a bathroom. I mean, once you've been through it, it becomes a lot easier to plan and to have these bigger ideas. And so I think what we saw on Monday was really just the continuation of the ultimate plan, but with a 4-year preparatory window behind him. Like he has new team members. His chief of staff, who is crazily the first female chief of staff in the White House, Susie, is somebody that the Republicans take seriously. And when you think about the previous administration, a lot of his staff there, he's doing things a bit differently. And
for sure,
it'll be interesting to see how that plays out for Americans.
Totally. Okay, so let's turn the
I'm exhausted
the dial
of Trump.
Back to Canada.
Yeah, let's go back. I like Canada
because we have our own news.
I know.
And we've had our own drama-filled week.
No kidding. No kidding.
Things have not slowed down really since our emergency episode.
Yes.
A lot has happened, particularly on the Liberal leadership front. So since we last spoke, we have candidates in the game. We have some very big names that we were unsure would actually be here, and they are. So I would say, the two biggest contenders in the race right now are Chrystia Freeland, former finance minister, former deputy prime minister, and Mark Carney. These are names that I think on our last emergency episode, I think I said, I'm not sure that Mark Carney would be in this race.
Yeah.
Because what I think is so interesting about the race, and we talked about this a lot, is the idea that the vote will be held on March 9th. That person will immediately become our next prime minister, which is cool. But what is not so cool is that they could be carrying with them the Kim Campbell factor, which is
Right.
it could be a very brief stay in that chair. And the reason why is because there are many ways in which the government could go down quite quickly, in which case we would move into a federal election. And I wondered out loud on this podcast if Mark Carney would be prepared to be prime minister for a hot second and then have to run in an election and then have to face potentially a leadership review, have to get through that leadership review, yada, yada, yada. Like it's a long way to the next one. So, but despite my skepticism, there he is. He's put his name on the Liberal leadership ballot. And with that has come a lot of excitement around both him and Chrystia Freeland.
Here's the calculation, though. If I was on Kearney's team, I'd be like, look, you've run the Bank of Canada, the Bank of the United Kingdom, like all of these things. Like, what else are you going to do now? What else are you reaching for? You can be the prime minister. You're guaranteed that spot in the history books. And then you wait 4 years and see what happens. And the thing about Canada is it might not even be 4 years, right?
Yep.
Like, it's not like the United States where Trump's in there and there's no chance of him falling. It's really, if you are the prime minister of Canada and you don't have a majority government, which, I mean, the polls are saying the Pierre at this point would still have a majority government. There's so much potential. Even with the majority government, you could see a government fall and something happen. So I think there's a lot more in the calculation that the Carney team made. And I think he's been a very interesting candidate so far. I do want to give Karina Gould a shout out too, because she's in the race. I think if the three front runners are Gould, Carney, and Freeland, 2 women, 1 guy, which is awesome. But I think I said this to you. The Tory races, we had, 2017, we had Andrew Scheer come in. There was 14 people in that race. Andrew Scheer was not like number 1 on my ballot, thinking like he's going to get this. In 2020, we had Peter MacKay and Erin O'Toole. If you would have put money going into that race, I would not have put it on Erin O'Toole. I would have put it on the former leader, a guy that has big profile in the party, Peter MacKay, who didn't win. And so, we can say that this is a 2-way race between Freeland and Carney, but I also wouldn't discredit a couple of other candidates, Karina Gould specifically, and see how much support she's able to pick up.
And she was on our podcast.
She was. You can
listen to that episode. It's on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcast, and you can have a listen to her. She's amazing. A lot of people say that she sort of represents generational change.
Right.
She's young. She's a young mom. She's a great communicator, and we had a really good conversation with her. So if you haven't listened to that one, go back and take a listen. For our listeners, Rachel.
Yes.
Because we talked about this a lot. Tell us what are the most likely outcomes for the next federal election? It could be when or when.
When or when. Okay.
When.
Or when. Well, it could be the day after the throne speech or a couple days after the throne speech when there's a confidence vote, because we all know that a throne speech is the government setting out their priorities, and then the government has to test that, whether or not the opposition believes in what they're trying to accomplish. That becomes an automatic confidence vote. So that will be a test of the NDP, who have said, and the Bloc, who have both said that they won't support the government in the next confidence vote. So we're looking at March 24th, I believe, is the throne speech. Whether or not the government lasts past a couple of days, who knows? We'll have to see. Even if they survive that one, other confidence votes are going to be up to the government, so they'll be able to schedule them for the opposition. But those will be in the couple of months following. The big question mark that is happening right now in terms of timeline is whether or not whoever the Liberal leader is, will be able to make some kind of deal with the NDP for a longer runway. There's a lot of talk about Jagmeet Singh talking to Justin Trudeau about some kind of deal. You know, they have those priorities like pharmacare, dental care that the Liberals brought in, not to the extent that the NDP would have liked to have seen. So there is some leverage there. And that's a smart move for the Liberals to keep that bit of leverage. But will they be able to convince the NDP? Jagmeet Singh has come out and said no. And, you know, looking at him over the last couple of weeks, he's been pretty strong in his messaging. But it's your guess is as good as mine. The most likely scenario is that they fall on this throne speech. They could fall on the budget if they get to it. Yeah, it's still so wild off here. Trump's overshadowing us, but you're right. Like, Canada is doing some really cool stuff right now.
Yeah, and as it relates to Trump, probably the biggest thing keeping everyone up at night is the idea of these tariffs, whether or not he'll enact the tariffs, whether or not that'll happen by February 1st. A number of likely leadership contenders said that they were not going to put their name in the race because they were going to focus on the country first. Those names were names like Melanie Joly, Dominic LeBlanc, Francois Philippe Champagne. And so that took them out of the race. And
can we just to go to this Trump deadline, because it's driving me crazy and I haven't said it anywhere in the world yet.
It. Say what?
Okay. He gave us that first day, that January 20th date. We all panicked. The whole country was on edge.
Right.
We went to bed on Sunday night. We're like, what's going to happen with our economy tomorrow? And then he kind of just forgot about it and made some offhanded comment about some random date, February 1st. It's like, just rip the Band-Aid off or don't. It's so bad for our economy to have this instability for so much longer. And now extending it to February 1st. Who knows? We get to February 1st, you could extend it to June. And it's so bad for our economy, that instability. And so
it's so bad. And that's what he does, right? It's the chaos of his negotiating tactics.
So
we'd all be better off if we just ignored it until it happened.
It's so unfair. Anyways, I haven't said that yet. And it's just really bothering me. Like, I almost, not that I wish there was a trade war. Don't write in and say that I said that. But
no,
I do wish there was some clarity. And I know that's a very wishful thinking with Donald Trump. But like, at least we knew January 20th was like a potential date. Now we're like, okay, sure, no problem.
Maybe February 1st.
Maybe February 1st. It could be March. It could be April. And I often wonder, like, with all the instability politically in Canada, whether or not that plays into a lot of Trump's thinking also, if he's leveraging that. And, you know, the fact the House won't sit until March 24th to try and make us even more unstable. It's
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So many things. And we could find ourselves in an Ontario election.
Oh, I'm so excited.
We could find ourselves in an Ontario election by the time this podcast airs.
Yeah, no kidding. Exactly. Hopefully not. I'm hearing next week is probably like the time. There's the 29th is swirling around.
Yes.
What is that? Next Wednesday? Something like that?
Yes, next Wednesday.
We don't have a calendar in front of us.
It is next Wednesday. You're right.
Yes, next Wednesday. I was right. And so, good for Doug. Just squeaking this in. He's high in the polls. People are loving his hats. And like, you know what? Good for him. He wants the mandate. Speaking of hats.
Go ahead, Rachel. Plug it.
We did. We are selling the t-shirt version of the Doug Ford hat. Shout out to the amazing small business in Ontario that made the hat. We just wanted to get in on the fun. And so if you want one of our t-shirts, they're selling like hotcakes. This wasn't even a business we were trying to start. We just wanted to like get in on the action. And so we are selling those on our website. And it's been really fun to kind of hear people's excitement. I had somebody write us and say, I'm going to DC and I'm going to wear your shirt. So we're waiting for that photo to come out. But
amazing.
The Ontario election, why not throw one more in? Dove's doing so well. Bonnie Crombie is the leader of the Liberals. And then obviously Merritt Stiles, who's a new NDP leader. In my opinion, they have not gotten their act together enough to really be formidable opponents to Doug and like go for it. I think I also love a good election.
It really is the Super Bowl of politics
Oh my gosh.
right now in Canada.
And
Okay,
every
well, let's
day's a
get to
new
the good
adventure.
stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I always like
Enough
our
of
chats,
us.
but
Enough of
we've
us.
been waiting for this one. We've been so excited for this one.
Absolutely. Okay, we are coming right back with Jessica Yellin.
We're proud to reintroduce DoorDash as our title sponsor for season 2 of Beyond a Ballot. Just like we go beyond a ballot, DoorDash goes beyond delivery. DoorDash is committed to empowering local communities by helping businesses reach new customers, provide Dashers with flexibility, and making life more convenient for Canadians. Over the next few weeks, we'll hear the positive impact that DoorDash has had on women across Canada, whether that's restaurant owners or Dashers. We're so thrilled to be able to showcase more women doing amazing things with DoorDash, and we are also thrilled to partner with a company that's doing such important work. So stay tuned to the rest of the season to learn more about DoorDash.
Our guest today is the former White House correspondent for ABC News and CNN. She is now the founder of News Not Noise. You can find her newsletter on Substack, and you can follow her at Jessica Yellin on Instagram. And I've just given it away. We're so thrilled to have Jessica Yellin with us. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. We have been obviously rapt and captivated with inauguration, and I think Canadians primarily, we'll talk a little bit about trade stuff, which is front and center, but really want to know, how are Americans feeling right now? That's where we want to start. What is the sense of how Americans are feeling just a couple of days post-inauguration?
There's a range of emotions. You know, America's extremely divided right now, and there's very few people who have no opinion, right? So folks who are supporters of Trump's are either ecstatic and extremely excited for the rapid rate of change he's bringing already, or anticipating what they think he'll bring for their lives to make their lives better, with some apprehension, right? So you have two categories of the Trump people who are gung-ho and the people who kind of had a lot of reservations but voted for him anyway. Then you have Trump critics who are varying degrees of depressed, in despair, and disengaged. I have a lot of people who say, I don't know how to manage my emotions right now because I'm so upset. Others are saying I might have to tune out the news. This is a situation where there's not going to be a lot of like, let's wait and see, give him a chance. People have their minds made up and they've leaned into their stories.
So did you have a follow-up there, Amanda?
No. Go ahead.
Okay. I want to dive into the last few days. This past week, obviously, Donald Trump comes in and he's sworn in as president on Monday. For Canadians that have no context of the actual inauguration, can you tell us a little bit about him going from being elected as the president-elect to the actual moment where he becomes president of the United States?
Sure. In America, one of the things we sort of say is the most sort of precious and distilled symbol of democracy is the peaceful transfer of power.
Right.
And that happens on Inauguration Day, months after the election. So from the day of the election until Inauguration Day, there's a series of things that happen. It's a transition period where there's a temporary transitional team that helps lay the pieces of hiring staff, outlining initial agenda items, creating the to-do list of what everybody wants to do right when they take office. And then they wait. There's the famous January 6th, which happened, I think, January 3rd this year, when Congress makes it official, accepts the results, tallies it, says what's going to happen. And then on Inauguration Day, there are these rituals where the incoming president stays at Blair House, which is this residence that's opposite the White House. It's been there, for hundreds of years, since the early days. Wow. And it's usually where visiting diplomats stay, visiting dignitaries stay. So if Trudeau were to come and visit the president, they would put him at Blair House overnight. It's used for various sort of official purposes like that. And so the incoming president's family stays at Blair House overnight. Usually they go and a series of things happen. And one of them is traditionally they meet with the current president where they have tea. So the incoming and outgoing have tea. They walk around the White House a bit. The outgoing president leaves a note in the desk saying like, I wish you well, and whatever the personal message is. It's handwritten and personal.
We saw Trump didn't know that was there later in the day.
Well, the first time there was a whole issue because he didn't leave a note for he didn't leave a note when he left.
Interesting.
Biden did leave him a note.
Right.
And then they ride together up to the Capitol, where there's usually an outdoor ceremony where thousands and thousands of people can watch from outdoors. The new president is sworn in while the old president watches and then takes a car and flies out of town.
Wow.
And it is considered so important and symbolic because it is a handing over of power, because the power doesn't rest in the person, the power rests in the people. That's what this all symbolizes. All that happened except Trump's inauguration was indoors and quite different as a result. And we can talk about that. The tiny crowd, very curated, who was there. It was quite remarkable.
Yeah, let's dive into that for a second, because I was listening to a bunch of American media over the last couple of days, and a lot of people are reading a lot into the size of the decision to move indoors being potentially related to the size of the crowd, as opposed to the actual reason that was given, which was the weather, which apparently was warmer than Barack Obama's inauguration, I'm told.
So, my brand is called News, Not Noise. And
Right.
one of the things I do is I make a distinction between what I think is newsworthy and worth people's energy, and then what I think is noisy and is the kind of thing the media gets obsessed with and is just a waste of energy. And I don't mean this as a
No, of
critique
course. We
any
love
question.
it.
This is what the American media has become consumed with. Why was it indoors? I think it's noise. So, Obama's, I think, may have been a slightly warmer temperature. I can't remember, but it was close. It was extremely cold. I don't remember if it was 14 hours waiting outdoors in frigid temperature for that inauguration. It was hellacious. I am so glad they moved it indoors because all those people should not have to freeze, right? The left says it was really moved indoors because Trump didn't want to have to confront crowd size issues. The right says it was actually moved indoors because there were security threats and they wanted to keep him secure. The official story is weather. It does not matter. Nothing changed. Nothing he was sworn in by the book. And what's more important is who got access in this incredibly curated room to the most powerful people on earth, and who didn't. And one of the things we saw was that for the first time, we had the wealthiest people in America and on the planet in that room. Also, the people who are driving our tech future. And not only was Bezos and Zuckerberg and the head of TikTok, the head of, Google, Elon Musk, who am I missing? Like the list goes on.
Yeah.
Head of OpenAI. And they were seated in front of the cabinet, which is crazy. Like that's not done usually.
Not normal,
First of all, they wouldn't usually be there because it looks like payola, like they're being paying for access and then getting rewarded for paying. And we saw enormously wealthy investors seated in front of the former presidents who were in the room: Obama, Clinton, Bush, etc.
Wow.
And then you saw all these tech billionaires who run these powerful platforms seated in front of the cabinet members who will regulate them. And so you saw some of them talking to one of the cabinet officials who will be in charge of deciding how tariffs are implemented, which will impact their business. You saw the TikTok head talking to the head of intelligence, who will be relevant in those conversations around TikTok. It was quite remarkable because it looked like corruption. I'm not saying it means there is corruption, but the appearance of impropriety was definitely there.
There's also this sense that, and this I find so striking, I mean, there's many things that you've just said that I find really striking, but one of them is this idea that, as many Americans struggle and are talking about affordability issues and this emphasis and this spotlight on these billionaires and the disconnect in that message. But do you think that that message is still being consumed and welcomed by the same people who are in an affordability crisis? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, the image that's being put out and the message that they're consuming.
It's such a good question. One of the realities about America is that whatever it is in our cultural traditions, in our popular imagination, having money means that you have achieved the American dream. And so, and part of the myth of the American dream, and mythos, I should say, because it is possible for some people, is that anybody can become one of them. And so the way Trump frames it, and because people want to believe, is that these are people who are evidence that the American dream works, right? Each of them created their thing. They didn't get handed their wealth, which is ironic because Trump did. But so they're seen as exemplars of the possibility that you can get out of your dire straits and achieve not only wealth, but great wealth. For a million reasons, we can all talk about why, this is sort of a head fake, to be maximally generous.
Right.
But to answer your question, that is why it's not seen as at odds with his populist message.
Interesting.
Also, they're renegades,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The Mavericks, yes.
Mm.
The other thing I found interesting about, and I think Rachel described it as kind of like the pomp and circumstance of what happens, but also so much tradition in this one day and this one event, is that you can't help but have, watched the election. It was so personal. And at times the rhetoric was so vile and so ugly. And yet you're standing arm in arm, or you're leaving a note in a desk, and this show of seeming like unity is really at play. And do you sense that is a takeaway for people? Do you think that they're like buying that, or
no? I mean,
No.
it's
Okay.
also the way, politically sophisticated. So there's this dual reality where we do have these traditions, and there's this peaceful transfer of power that speaks to civility. The critique of it right now is that Biden and Harris and the Democratic establishment conducted a campaign in which they warned the American people that Donald Trump is an existential threat to American democracy, poses a danger as a fascist, and has to be stopped for the survival of the country. And then when he's elected, they revert to form and follow all the normal traditions and niceties that they extend to somebody who was just merely a political rival. And so there's some criticism of them for doing this, and some criticism that they should be not to make it as seamless and gracious and lovely. And then, I mean, is he a threat to democracy or not? And why are you, there's some confusion about that. And a critique that maybe one of the reasons Democrats lost is because they fundamentally were too institutionalist and accepting.
Can we go to the Democratic Party? Because I want to touch on Biden and Harris. It was an unbelievable situation a few months ago where Biden decided not to run, and Harris was really put in as the Democratic nominee in this race. What does the Democratic Party in the United States do from this point on? They who will they run? Who is the leadership that you're seeing come out of them? Will they have this introspective period where they really try and refocus on who they are? What's it like in the U.S. right now?
I mean, you're asking great questions, and I wish I had the answer. So right now, the Democrats are in the wilderness. They don't know what they're doing. They're fractured. There's a lot of different voices inside who are at odds, right? So in general, there's a waiting while they see what Trump really implements and what he's able to implement. One of the things Trump does is throws a lot against the wall, does a lot for shock and attention. Not all of it can get done. So, and then you have to see what he does and what sticks in order to know how to counter it. So there's a bit of like, where's this going?
Right.
The expectation among Democrats is that Trump will lose the midterms. And so Democrats will control at least one, if not both houses of Congress in 2 years. So Trump has about 2 years to enact his agenda. And if you take that backwards a little bit, 6 months before an election, not a lot gets done. So maybe Congress has 18 months to get stuff done. Some Republicans believe Trump has 100 days to get stuff done because his own coalition will fray. So everybody's, I'm painting this to give you a sense, we're in a bit of we don't know what's happening quite yet. We see Trump being very busy. Unclear how long his grip on power in Washington will really endure. Within that, so going back to Democrats with that in mind, there's a lot happening. The Democratic Party is really controlled by consultants, increasingly controlled by consultants, people who are the permanent elite. Candidates come and go, but the consultants are the ones who are always called by the candidates, who are the ones who make money off of the elections. And they all spend this period of time vying for influence with donors and with elected officials so that they will get the money to both drive message, direction, and a lot of them are trying to build their own media brands to try to, quote, replicate what's happening on the right. This was very unsuccessful in the last cycle because they spent all this money funding creators to act like news sources, pumping out a narrative about the news that was very pro-Harris. And it was a fail because what they really achieved was to convince the people who were following those creators that she was winning and ahead and just grow a larger bubble, right? It did not do the trick of persuading independents or winning over people. So there's a lot of vying to get money to do that. There's a lot of vying to get money to build whatever they think the next thing is. There's then on the political side, a bunch of candidates who are like in the AOC camp who think you got to reject everything to the barricades, get more dramatic. They're the institutionalists. And then I think the white space is the center. People who are like your audience, people who are like my audience. Who are women who largely, who are often the swing voters, who just want rational, reasonable change.
Right.
From people who know how to get stuff done without being whiny and dramatic and uncivil and cruel.
For Canadians who are watching this now second term of President Trump, how would you describe the what's different? I mean, there was a lot, I'm sure, but for Canadian audience, when we're looking at it, how can you sort of summarize what's different this time?
So the thing that's different is, I'll give you a quick story. Last time in 2016, he said he didn't even know he was going to win, right? They were all surprised. When they took office, the new press room, the people who staffed their press room, called TV producers in the Whitehouse press briefing room to ask if they could come in and show them where the light switches are.
Oh my God.
And how to turn on the overhead announce and where all the controls are for the TVs. These weren't just people who didn't know what they were going to do on day one. They were people who had never been around the White House, had no one who knew anybody who'd been around the White House, had no access to understanding how things worked.
Right.
They started... I remember reports that in week one, somebody talked about executive orders and they had discovered this concept of executive orders and issued one and they did it wrong in a form.
Oh my God.
No.
So they had been airdropped in and didn't know how the systems worked. This time, it couldn't have been more different. They had, in Project 2025, they had teams and teams and teams of people who were not only pre-writing the policy that was going to be implemented, but pre-screening and hiring the staff who's going to do it. So while Trump took the oath of office, there were vans arriving at the buildings with people who arrived with memos ready and to-do lists. And they had plans. They immediately disabled some websites. For example, information on reproductive rights, Spanish language version of the website, and they replaced it with page not found and a message that said, go home.
Wow.
They had a flurry of executive orders for the president to sign that were ready to go and, legally vetted. And then there were all the things happening behind the scenes where they are in full action. So they started deportation actions, right? They were in full go mode from the moment he was inaugurated.
I want to talk about those executive orders because we don't have that in Canada. Our prime minister cannot sign specific orders that will trump anything that the government does. We need full, on the majority of things, full cooperation of the House. Can you tell us as Canadians, what are executive orders? How do they play into the workings of government? And also in the context of Trump, is this been seen before that a president would come in and sign this many? Day one?
So in terms of this many, I don't know that it was this many. I think Biden signed 78 the day he took office. For some reason, that's populated in my mind, but I might be wrong in the exact number. Executive orders have grown in use in recent years as Congress has become more and more deadlocked and unable to get stuff done. So I think every president is maximizing their ability to do this. Trump has pushed the limits with what he's trying to do by executive order, and a lot will get knocked down by the courts. So backing up, we have this system of checks and balances. We don't have parliament, but we have direct election. Well, weird elections that we call direct, but are sort of indirect, but we'll skip over that for now. So the president has limited authority. Congress has authority to decide how money is spent and pass law. The executive has the power to implement that law, and that means interpret what it means, which gave them a lot of leeway. And then the judiciary, the courts, interpret it also and decide if it's compliant with law, precedent, and the Constitution. Because Congress has been so deadlocked and because presidents get frustrated that they don't have more power to decide policy, they've implemented things, taken something we call an executive action and expanded its power and tested its power. And over the years, the court has recognized its power. So they've been able to do more and more, which is when the president says, I choose to use this law and read it to mean this thing, which creates this new opportunity for us to implement a protocol. So I'll give you an example. There's a law that Congress passed called EMTLA, the Emergency Medical Something Emergency Act, that says hospitals have to take anybody and care for them in an emergency. Because in America, you could turn people away for not having health insurance. So if somebody gets in a car crash and they present to your emergency room, you have to take them whether or not they have health insurance and worry later about how you pay for the care. After we lost abortion rights as a guarantee in the country, Biden issued an executive order interpreting EMTLA to mean you also have to give a woman an abortion if she shows up at your hospital in an emergency situation where not having an extraction at that point could cost her life. Even if you have a religious objection, even if your state doesn't grant the right to abortion.
Wow.
So we expect that Trump will undo that. But and I actually have to check that now that I'm thinking about it. It's been so much. But Biden extended that, and you see how he interpreted an existing law to mean a more expansive thing. A new president could say, I don't interpret it to mean that. And so it's not going to mean that under my presidency. Wow. So what Trump does is he issues all these executive orders and then directs his agencies to apply them as if they're legal until they're challenged in court and proven otherwise. Right. And courts will either strike them down or prescribe them. And I'll just say one more thing, which is some of his stuff will be clearly enacted, and some legal experts say is a clear, expansion of the law to a point that's ridiculous. Like he's reinterpreted the Constitution in some places, and they don't think that'll hold.
Wow.
But does it hold until the legal challenge happens, or does it not happen until the legal challenge happens?
No, the way it works is because of him, what he'll do is he'll say to his people, go. Right. Just act on the law, interpret it how you want, and then we'll figure it out. Wow. And but people have immediately filed legal challenges. Like our
Yes, we
ACLU
saw
has been
that.
very busy. And it's up to a judge to say the law is on hold until I rule,
Okay.
or it's not on hold till I rule.
God, so fascinating. I'm like watching the clock and I'm like, Jessica, we need you for 3 hours.
Seriously.
I can give shorter answers.
No, your answers are amazing. I want to turn the dial to Canada.
Okay.
So Rachel and I are both commentators in Canada, and I think that I speak for both of us when I say that we have not used the words US more times in the last 10 years than we have in the last, 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's all about tariffs, impending tariffs.
Yeah.
What is he's sort of promised that there will be 25% tariffs on Canadian imports. He has said they could take effect as early as February 1st. Is your sense, our sense, which is if he said it, it will be so? Or love your interpretation on this one in particular. Canadian audiences will be keen to hear what you have to say.
So he's using this as a negotiating strategy to get something that he wants at the border.
Right.
He says he wants Canada to close the border. I don't know what that means in a practical sense. Obviously, we don't need, obviously you're going to still want back and forth movement. So what does close the border really look like? And so he's looking for something from Canada. I don't know if he's made it clear and Trudeau's rejected it, or he's playing this cat and mouse. My guess is my guess is he either walks up to the February 1st deadline and then offers Trudeau a deal that he's going to have to take or leave to avoid them, or he actually moves into implementing tariffs for a day or a week or a month to create the shock that will force the negotiation. But there's something he wants, and it's not to create the kind of chaos that will come from truly implementing these long-term, because that would hurt the U.S. economy. And he is all about Wall Street, and Wall Street doesn't want that.
And his tactic of goading seemingly everyone, including us, the 51st state, to all of the, the things that he said about the Gulf of Mexico / America, whatever it is, to Greenland. I mean, how do Americans feel about this idea of this thing that he's put in the universe is Canada as the 51st state, which was so insulting. But do you think Americans see it that way?
On behalf of Americans, I'm very sorry.
Thank you.
I mean,
we're very stressed.
Americans who did not support Trump and some of those who did and are embarrassed by his incivility do not think this is, feel that this is inappropriate and apologize. I can't say that, whatever, you get my vibe.
Totally.
I'm sorry. I think though, it's just a way of what he does in a negotiation is he tries to, be such the alpha.
Yes.
That it forces the other side into compliance. I mean, and I'll say this, even in his handshake, if you look at how he shakes hands with foreign leaders, he chooses which leader. And some of them he shakes just normal handshake. And some you go for the handshake and he does this weird thing where he pulls his hand out and readjusts to grip from the top. And so that he's on top of the other hand squeezing down.
We know that one well.
Trudeau gets that one. So he's asserting, it's just like a big dog saying, little dog, look. And he must do it because it's played well for him so it's negotiation.
But on that negotiation, there's a big narrative in Canada right now. We have 10 provinces and 3 territories, and each province is represented by a different, what you would call governor, we call premier, that hold different political views. And some of the more conservative premiers have gone out, and actually the premier of Alberta has gone down to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump and has become more about diplomacy and becoming friends with him, whereas the premier of Ontario is really trying to take a hard line and say, if you put tariffs into Canada, to Canada, we will stop the flow of car parts, we will stop the flow of energy and minerals. Is there a sense in the United States as to, could you give us a little hint on what you think is the better negotiating tactic? Is there any?
it's very hard to know because Trump is very changeable. And the people who make friends with him and make nice can get, seemingly get their way until all of a sudden he decides he's annoyed by something and they're cut off or undermined or things are worse, right? Or he humiliates them. And it could have to do with something completely unrelated to the person. It could be that some Canadian singing star says something offensive. And so he's so that's dangerous. And then taking the, full resistance position has its downsides because resistance begets resistance and he will retaliate and you'll be in the trade war. So, I can't tell you what will work better, quote unquote. I do think that fundamentally he cares about keeping the American economy strong, keeping prices down, making Wall Street boom. And that means America can't endure a long trade war with Canada.
Right.
We can't without having effects. Now, I think he'll create carve-outs, conveniently carve out certain things and products and goods that are free from the tariff and penalize others.
Interesting.
But maybe a combination of all of the above is the way to go. Maybe you have like good cop, bad cop. It's hard to know.
My last question is, are you paying any attention to what's happening in Canadian politics?
Ask that.
Yes.
Do you know what's going on up here?
Yeah.
And do you think Americans are paying any attention? We've asked this question before, and we had some Americans have a hard time, knowing anyone beyond Trudeau. So we're curious if that news is trickling a little more because of all of the emphasis on Canada from Trump.
I think people are aware that there's this tension and that Trudeau's in trouble, and that Canada has also seen something of a rightward swing.
Yeah.
There are people who know Krista Friedland because of her work in, American journalism for a long time and like her a lot. And so I've gotten people forwarding me her comments and her work since she left the government. So I think that's in like sort of a, political intellectual reader class.
Totally. Yeah.
But there's an increased awareness of the larger dynamics. I don't think there's yet an awareness of personalities and who's doing what, but there soon could be.
Interesting. So fun.
We will have a new prime minister in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
It gives me anxiety as a Canadian with regards to Trump. Do you think that's playing into some of the calculations that the Trump team is making, that there could potentially be a new?
For sure.
You think so?
For sure.
Yeah.
Who is it going to be?
Well, we don't know yet. The Liberals have to choose.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going with Pierre Poilievre because I come from that side of the aisle, but Amanda might have a different answer. The Liberals are currently in this leadership race, and we're watching that very closely because whoever is the Liberal leader will become the prime minister. And for how long is the question?
And could be a couple of weeks
or a day.
Could be a few months.
A day, even.
Why just a day?
The House could fall in 24 hours. They have to present a throne speech, and our listeners can educate themselves on this too. But they have to present a throne speech, which is a confidence vote, and that could mean that the government could fall. The NDP has said they will not support the government in the next confidence vote. So theoretically, a prime minister could come in, do their speech, and the next day lose government, which is pretty wild.
Which would be a first.
We're having a crazy time up here, and that's kind of what we're wondering, if anybody in the U.S. even notices or if we're kind of skating under the radar.
No, I know that, and I think people are aware that there's a crisis there too.
Yeah.
As part of a pattern of this, governments wobbling in Western democracies, around the world. But I've never heard of the throne speech, for example. I didn't know. So I'm learning too.
Well, we'll educate.
I would love to have you guys on to teach our people.
Oh, by all means. We're always happy to be the Canadians teaching civics. No problem.
Before you go, tell our listeners again where they can find you, where they can find News Not Noise, because this was like the tip of the iceberg. I'm sure they'd love to hear much more from you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I have a newsletter that's you can find on Substack. It's the News Not Noise newsletter, or under my name, Jessica Yellin. And I also do the news every day on Instagram under my name, Jessica Yellin. And I have a lot of Canadian followers who tell me that I'm one of the last places they can actually get news on Instagram and Facebook. I don't know, my news gets through. So
yeah, we love that.
Check it out.
We do.
We love that. And we hope that you'll agree to come back again, because this was such a great conversation, but far too brief.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much. We'll be back soon. Thank you for listening. New episodes air every Friday.
Subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram and find us at beyondaballot.com.